I still remember how quiet the office felt that morning. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your stomach tighten before you even know why. I sat down at my desk, took a breath, and opened my laptop. I was actually excited. That report I'd been working on for months, the one that kept me up past midnight more times than I could count, was supposed to be reviewed by leadership today. It was my chance to finally show what I could do. My chance to make things right in a team that was starting to fall apart. But when I clicked on the folder, everything froze. The file wasn't there. I blinked, thinking maybe the system didn't load. I refreshed the page. Still nothing. A strange chill ran down my back. I checked another folder. No report. I searched the entire drive. Nothing. Not even the draft versions. My first thought was simple: this has to be a mistake. A glitch. A server update. Something harmless, something fixable. But a part of me, deep down, whispered something different. Something darker. I opened the access logs. I wasn't even sure why, maybe just instinct, maybe fear. And that's when I saw it. Someone had opened my folder late last night. Someone had manually removed my report. Not once. Not twice. But 3 separate times, like they wanted to make sure there was no trace of my work left. My hands went cold. Why would anyone do this? Who even knew the report existed? And why would they go this far? The report wasn't just numbers or charts. It exposed problems inside our department, things people had ignored for years. It showed patterns that pointed toward mistakes, cover-ups, and a trail of decisions that could make leadership ask hard questions. Was that it? Did someone feel threatened by the truth I'd written? I leaned back in my chair, trying to stay calm, but my mind was racing. Jordan had been acting strange yesterday, closing his laptop every time I walked by. Melissa avoided me completely, even though she usually had plenty to say. And Tom. Tom looked like he knew something but was too scared to say it. Still, none of that prepared me for the sinking feeling that hit me next. Because as I sat there, staring at the empty folder, one terrifying thought entered my mind: what if this wasn't just about hiding a report? What if they were trying to shut me down? I closed my laptop gently, almost like I didn't want it to make a sound. My heart was beating fast, but my voice stayed low when I whispered to myself, they think they erased it. But they didn't know something important. Something that would change everything later. I always keep a backup. Always. And the copy sitting at home, untouched, protected, impossible to alter, was the one thing they never saw coming. The truth wasn't gone. It was waiting. If you had told me a year earlier that I'd be caught in the middle of a silent office war, I would have laughed. Back then, life felt steady. Safe. Predictable. I worked as a project analyst for a mid-sized tech firm in Denver, nothing flashy, nothing dramatic. I liked digging into data, spotting problems early, helping teams stay on track. It wasn't the kind of job that made headlines, but it gave me something I cared about: purpose. But everything changed the day leadership launched a major new division inside the company. A division that was supposed to bring in huge clients and new investors. And they put Melissa Carter in charge of it. Melissa was sharp, confident, and always dressed like she was heading into a board meeting. She had a way of speaking that made people nod even when they didn't fully agree. At first, I admired her. She seemed determined to prove herself. But soon, I started noticing cracks under that perfect surface: rushed decisions, missing data, numbers that didn't add up. Still, I kept quiet. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was just doing my job. Then there was Jordan Blake, the coworker who acted like the office was his personal stage. He was friendly on the outside, charming, loud, always joking, but he had a habit of taking credit for other people's work. He got close to Melissa fast, almost too fast. They became a tight pair, always in private meetings, always discussing big plans no one else knew about. And then there was Tom. Quiet, soft-spoken Tom, who kept to himself and always looked like he wanted to disappear into his desk. But he watched everything. He noticed things. Sometimes I caught him giving me a look that felt like a warning, but he never said a word. When Melissa asked me to prepare a full analysis of the new division, a report that examined productivity, spending, workflow, and risks, I didn't think twice. I took it as a chance to help the team and maybe prove myself. But the deeper I went into the numbers, the more uneasy I became. There were expenses that didn't make sense. Projects marked as complete even though they barely started. And timelines, well, let's just say they looked more like wishful thinking than reality. I stayed late for weeks, double-checking every detail. Not because I wanted to expose anything, but because accuracy mattered to me. I believed the truth helped people grow. But maybe that was my first mistake, believing everyone wanted the truth. When I finally finished the report, it was clear and honest. It showed exactly where things were failing and how to fix them. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I didn't hide anything. And that's when everything shifted. Jordan stopped joking around me. Melissa stopped meeting my eyes. And Tom. Tom looked even more nervous than before. At the time, I thought they were just stressed. Now I know better. My report didn't just outline problems. It threatened the image Melissa built, and the future Jordan wanted. I didn't realize it yet, but the moment I turned in that report, I stepped into their world, a world of quiet deals, hidden mistakes, and secrets no one wanted exposed. The day after I submitted the report, the office felt different. Not louder. Not busier. Just different. Like the air had shifted and no one wanted to tell me why. It started with the whispers. I walked past the glass conference room on my way to grab coffee, and I saw Jordan and Melissa inside. They were hunched over the table, talking fast, their eyes moving like they were afraid someone might walk in. Normally Jordan would wave at me or crack a joke, but this time he stopped mid-sentence and closed his laptop the second he saw me. Melissa didn't look at me at all. She just kept staring at the papers in front of her, like they were suddenly the most important thing in the world. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was a busy morning. Maybe they were dealing with something unrelated. But then more things started happening, one after another. I logged into the project dashboard to check a few numbers, and 2 of my folders were locked. Locked. Folders that I created. Folders I used every day. A message popped up, access restricted. Contact your administrator. I didn't understand. I was one of the administrators. When I asked IT about it, they said the restrictions came from management. They didn't say who. They avoided eye contact. That's when the uneasiness settled into my chest, heavy, uncomfortable, impossible to ignore. Then came the meetings. Suddenly, there were gatherings I wasn't invited to. Project updates without me. Strategy sessions that somehow didn't include the person who wrote the main report. I'd see people walking into conference rooms with folders, charts, laptops, and Melissa would close the door right before I reached it. Sometimes I'd catch Jordan glancing at me with this strange mix of guilt and something else, something like fear. Even Tom started acting strangely. He'd walk past my desk, open his mouth like he wanted to say something, then shut it again. One morning he slipped me a printed sheet of data, nothing major, just a simple chart, but the way his hands shook told me it meant more than it looked. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I kept telling myself, maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I'm imagining things. But the final sign came 2 days later. I went to grab a file from the shared drive, a perfectly harmless file, and it was gone. Not deleted, removed. Just like my report would be later. When I asked Melissa about it, she smiled tightly and said, "We're reorganizing some things." Don't worry. But I did worry. I worried because I could see it clearly now. There was a quiet threat growing in the office, one that no one wanted to talk about. And the worst part? Whatever they were planning, I wasn't supposed to know. Not yet. Not until it was too late. But something inside me whispered the truth: this wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. Something in that report had shaken them, and they were moving fast to shut me out. The morning it happened started like any other. Coffee in my hand. Laptop under my arm. A quiet hope that maybe the tension in the office would finally calm down. But the moment I sat at my desk and opened the shared drive, my whole body stiffened. My report wasn't there. At first, I stared at the empty screen, waiting for the file to magically appear. Maybe the system was slow. Maybe the connection lagged. Maybe, just maybe, this was something simple. But after a full minute of nothing happening, a cold feeling started crawling through my chest. I searched the title. No results. I searched my name. Nothing. I even searched through old drafts and archives I hadn't opened in months. Still empty. It was gone. Not misplaced. Not hidden. Removed. I sat back in my chair, trying to breathe slowly, trying not to jump to conclusions. But a question kept echoing in my head: who would want my work to disappear? And why now? Before I could process anything, a message popped up on my screen: please see Melissa in her office. My stomach tightened. When I walked in, Melissa was sitting behind her desk, hands folded, face completely calm, almost too calm. Jordan stood beside her, tapping his foot like he couldn't wait for the conversation to be over. Let's talk about the report, Melissa said. I nodded. Sure. Did leadership review it yet? She tilted her head, almost confused. What report? The room felt smaller. My heart beat louder. The report I submitted 2 days ago, I said carefully. The audit for the new division. Melissa shook her head like she was disappointed in me. We never received anything from you. For a moment, I thought she was joking. But her expression didn't change. Jordan crossed his arms. Yeah, man. I don't remember seeing anything. Are you sure you uploaded it? My jaw tightened. I uploaded it. You both approved the draft. Jordan gave a half shrug. If it's not on the drive, maybe you forgot to finalize it. Forgot? After months of work? After double-checking everything? The idea was insulting. I tried to stay calm. There must be a mistake. The file didn't just vanish. Melissa gave a soft, controlled sigh. Look, these things happen. If you don't have the report, we'll need a new version. Quickly. A new version. As if the old one had never existed. As if they weren't standing there lying to my face. In that moment, something inside me cracked, not anger, not fear, something deeper. A sense of betrayal I never saw coming. They weren't confused. They weren't clueless. They knew exactly what they were doing. And when I left Melissa's office, I realized something terrifying: they didn't just want the report gone. They wanted my voice gone. My work, my effort, my truth, erased. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that I never trusted the shared drive completely. Because while they thought they destroyed everything, my real report was alive and untouched, far away from their hands. I barely slept the night before. My mind kept replaying the same questions: why did they lie? Why did my report matter so much? And what were they planning next? I walked into the office the next morning hoping, just for a moment, that maybe things would make sense. But the moment I reached my desk, I saw an email from upper management waiting for me. Please report to conference room B immediately. My stomach dropped. When I entered the room, Melissa was already there. So was Jordan. And sitting across from them were 2 managers from the executive team, arms crossed, faces unreadable. "Let's get straight to it," one of them said. "We were told you didn't complete the required division analysis." The words hit me like a punch. "I did complete it," I said. "I submitted it on time. It was reviewed." "Something happened to the file." Melissa leaned forward, wearing a soft, practiced smile. "We looked everywhere. There's no record of your submission." Her voice was calm, almost comforting, like she was trying to sound helpful. But her eyes told a different story. Jordan cleared his throat dramatically. "If I may," he said, lifting a folder from the table, "I prepared an emergency version last night so the team wouldn't fall behind." I stared at him. "An emergency version of my report? Created overnight?" He handed the folder to management like he was presenting a work of art. I watched their eyes skim the pages. I knew instantly it was nothing like the one I had created. It lacked detail, accuracy, structure, everything. But they nodded anyway. "This is good initiative," one manager said to Jordan. "Thank you for stepping up." Stepping up. That phrase echoed in my head like a bad joke. Jordan shot me a quick glance, not confident, not proud, but nervous. Like even he knew the whole scene felt wrong. I tried to speak. "I wrote the full report. I have proof I completed it." Melissa cut me off. "We aren't here to argue," she said gently. "We just need to know whether we can rely on you for critical deliverables." Critical deliverables. She said it so smoothly, but the meaning was sharp and cold. It wasn't about the report anymore. It was about me. They were painting me as unreliable, irresponsible, someone who needed to be managed. The room felt smaller and smaller, as if the walls were closing in. I could feel humiliation burning in my chest, but beneath it, something else was growing. A quiet realization. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a coordinated effort to shut me down and lift Jordan up. They wanted to replace me, erase my work, remove my voice, and rewrite the truth before I could defend it. But while they sat there pretending I failed, none of them knew the one thing that mattered most: I had the real report. I had the timestamps. I had the backup. And I was done staying quiet. I walked out of that meeting feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always feel loud. Sometimes it's quiet, slow, like a shadow that grows behind you without warning. But as shaken as I was, I also felt something else rising inside me: clarity. Because the truth was simple, they thought they destroyed my work. They thought they erased every trace of it. But they didn't know me. Not really. I always keep backups. Always. It started years earlier, after I lost an entire project to a corrupted drive. Since then, I'd built a habit, almost a ritual, of keeping everything stored in a separate encrypted folder on a personal external drive at home. A drive no one at the office even knew existed. That night, when I walked into my apartment, the first thing I did wasn't take off my coat or get a glass of water. I went straight to my desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out the slim black drive that had saved me more than once. I plugged it in. My hands were shaking a little, not from fear, but from the weight of what I knew I was about to find. And there it was. My report, the full version, untouched, time-stamped, complete with every detail Melissa wanted hidden. Every number that made Jordan nervous. Every truth they hoped to bury. But that wasn't all. Because I also kept a habit of backing up server logs whenever I worked late on a big project. At the time, I did it out of caution. Now, it felt like destiny. I opened the logs, scrolling through the long lines of entries until I saw it: a username. A time. A command. Someone had manually removed my file. Someone had gone into my folder in the middle of the night, accessed my report, and wiped it clean from the shared drive. And the username? It wasn't mine. It wasn't IT. It belonged to someone who claimed he never saw the report. Someone who stood in front of leadership pretending he saved the team with an emergency rewrite. Jordan. My breath caught for a moment. Not in shock, I think part of me already knew, but in a strange mix of anger and relief. Because now, I had something powerful. Something undeniable. Proof. Proof that my work was real. Proof that they tried to erase it. Proof that everything they said in that meeting was a lie. I leaned back in my chair and let the truth settle. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't cornered. And I definitely wasn't finished. What they tried to bury was about to become the very thing that exposed them. But I didn't want revenge done in anger. I wanted it done with precision. So I began planning, calmly, quietly, strategically. I gathered files, organized timestamps, prepared explanations, and built a detailed packet of evidence no one could deny. Because the moment they tried to erase me, they created the version of me they couldn't defeat. The next morning, I woke up with a calm I hadn't felt in weeks. Not because things were fixed, but because, for the first time, I held every piece of the truth in my hands. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to confront anyone in the hallway. All I needed to do was let the truth speak for itself. I sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and began putting everything together, slowly, carefully, like assembling a puzzle where every piece mattered. First came the original report. Time-stamped. Complete. Detailed. Something no one could deny existed. Then, the server logs showing the exact moment the file was removed. With Jordan's username right beside the command. After that, I added email confirmations, messages from weeks earlier where Melissa approved updates, where Jordan asked for revisions, where they clearly acknowledged the report's progress. Evidence that proved they both knew the report existed long before they pretended it didn't. Finally, I included a short explanation written in clear, calm words. No accusation. No anger. Just facts. Facts that couldn't be twisted or ignored. When I finished, I had a full packet, organized, professional, and powerful. Something so clean and complete that even someone who wanted to defend Melissa or Jordan would struggle to look past it. I took a breath, and sent it. To HR. To upper leadership. To everyone involved in the review process. The moment I clicked send, a strange silence filled the room, not fear, not worry, but relief. I had done my part. Now the truth would do the rest. And it didn't take long. By the afternoon, the office began to shift again, this time in my favor. Melissa walked around with tight lips and clipped sentences, avoiding eye contact with almost everyone. Jordan kept pacing between his desk and the break room, pretending to check emails, pretending he wasn't panicking. Even Tom looked at me differently, like he finally understood why I had seemed so calm earlier. Then I got the message, leadership has opened a formal review. Please remain available today. A review. Just what I expected. Moments later, Melissa and Jordan were called into separate rooms, not together, not with their usual confidence, but one at a time, like people being questioned about something they could no longer hide. I stayed at my desk, quiet, steady, pretending to work while listening to every door open and close down the hall. The atmosphere grew heavier by the minute. No one joked. No one whispered. No one dared to ask questions. They all felt what I felt, something big was happening. And for once, I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to defend anything. My evidence, the truth, was doing all the talking. And as I watched Melissa rush past me, her face pale and her hands shaking, I realized something important. When people build their success on lies, it doesn't take much to expose everything. Sometimes all it takes is a single backup. The meeting that changed everything didn't begin with shouting or drama. It began with silence. A long, heavy silence that filled the entire conference room as leadership reviewed the papers laid out in front of them. My report. My emails. My logs. My proof. I sat at one end of the table, hands folded, heart steady. On the opposite side sat Melissa and Jordan, both looking like they wished they were anywhere else. The head of the review team cleared his throat. Let's walk through what we found. He picked up the first page, my original report, and tapped it lightly. This document was completed, time-stamped, and saved before the deadline. Exactly as required. Melissa shifted in her chair. Jordan looked down at his hands. The reviewer continued, we also have multiple emails from both of you acknowledging its progress. He turned his gaze toward them, slow and steady. Melissa forced a smile. There must be some confusion. We never saw that finished version. The reviewer didn't blink. Then how do you explain the server logs? He held up the printed log, the one that showed the file being removed from the drive. Every eye in the room landed on it. And the username attached to the deletion, he added, matches yours, Jordan. Jordan's face turned pale. He opened his mouth, searching for words, but nothing came out. Melissa jumped in quickly, there must have been a technical error. Or maybe he was clearing space. The reviewer raised an eyebrow. Clearing space by deleting someone else's work the night before a major review? Without permission? The room fell silent again. I watched them both, and for the first time, they didn't look confident or clever or in control. They looked exposed. Jordan finally spoke, voice shaking slightly. I didn't mean. I thought, but the reviewer cut him off gently, almost kindly. Intent doesn't change the result. Then he turned to Melissa. And you, Melissa, you told us he never submitted anything. Yet we have 3 emails from you discussing revisions with him. Her mouth opened, then closed. She stared at the table as if hoping it would swallow her whole. It appears, the reviewer said slowly, that both of you misled leadership. And you attempted to replace an original report with an incomplete version. Jordan's emergency report sat untouched in the center of the table, thin, rushed, embarrassing now in comparison. Your actions, the reviewer finished, undermined the team and jeopardized the division's performance. That was the moment everything shifted. Melissa's voice broke. I can explain, but there was nothing left to explain. Their story had fallen apart piece by piece. Every lie they told cracked open under the weight of real evidence. Every attempt to shut me down had circled right back to them. Leadership turned to me next, not with suspicion, not with doubt, but with respect. Thank you for bringing this forward, the reviewer said. Your honesty protected this company. For the first time in weeks, I felt my chest loosen. Not from victory, but from relief. Deep, quiet relief. Justice didn't come with drama or applause. It came with truth, steady, undeniable, and impossible to silence. Their plan to bury my work had collapsed right in front of them. And all I had to do, was let the truth stand tall. The days after the review felt strangely calm, almost unreal, like the storm had finally passed, but the air still carried the memory of thunder. I walked into the office the next morning expecting whispered conversations, pointed stares, maybe even tension thick enough to cut through. But instead, there was silence. A respectful, careful silence. People looked at me differently, not with pity, not with doubt, but with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Respect. By noon, leadership sent out an official announcement. A simple message, written in formal company language, but the meaning behind it was loud and clear. Jordan was being reassigned to a support role until further notice. A role far from major decision-making. Far from the spotlight he chased so hard. And Melissa. Her name wasn't in the announcement, but everyone heard what happened behind closed doors. She was removed from the leadership track. Not fired, the company didn't want drama, but quietly shifted into a position with limited authority. A position where she couldn't hide important information or twist the truth to serve her image. It was the company's gentle way of saying, "We saw what you did. And we're not forgetting it." Later that afternoon, I was called into a meeting with the head of operations. I walked in expecting a final round of questions, maybe a reminder to let bygones be bygones. But instead, he stood up, shook my hand, and said something I'll never forget: "Thank you for protecting the integrity of this team." For a moment, I couldn't respond. All those late nights, all the fear, all the frustration, it suddenly felt worth it. He continued, "We'd like to promote you. You'll oversee project audits going forward. We want someone we can trust with the truth." I nodded, still trying to process the weight of his words. Someone we can trust. After everything they tried to erase, that was the title I earned. When I stepped out of his office, everything felt lighter. Not because I won some grand victory, but because I finally felt free. Free from doubts. Free from second-guessing myself. Free from the shadows others tried to push me into. I gathered my things at the end of the day and walked toward the elevator. On the way, I passed Jordan. He didn't look at me. Then I passed Melissa. She met my eyes for a split second, and in that moment, I saw something I never expected: not anger, not bitterness, but regret. Maybe she realized the truth always comes out. Maybe she finally understood that cutting down someone else never lifts you any higher. As the elevator doors closed, I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for months. I walked out of that building with my head high, not because I proved them wrong, but because I proved to myself that staying true, even when it costs you, is worth it. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like my future was mine again. If there's one thing I learned from everything that happened, it's this: people may try to silence you. They may try to twist your story, bury your work, or rewrite your truth to fit their plans. But the truth has a way of finding its way back into the light, no matter how hard someone tries to cover it. After the dust settled, after the meetings, after the investigation, I finally had time to breathe. Time to think. Time to understand what really happened to me, and what it taught me. For so long, I believed that doing good work was enough. I thought honesty protected itself. I thought people who pretended to support you would never turn around and use your silence against you. But reality is different. Not everyone wants the truth. Some people fear it. Some people run from it. And some people will do anything, even try to erase someone else, just to protect their own image. Yet, here's the part they always forget: the truth doesn't disappear just because someone is afraid of it. Looking back, I realized that keeping that backup, that simple habit I developed years ago, saved more than my job. It saved my reputation. It saved my confidence. It reminded me that preparation is a quiet kind of strength. And resilience? That's something you only discover when someone tries to push you down. What happened with Melissa and Jordan could have broken me. I could have given up, walked away, and let their version of the story replace my own. But instead, I stood my ground. Not by yelling. Not by fighting in the hallway. Not by trying to shame them the way they tried to shame me. I stood my ground with honesty. With patience. With proof. And when the moment came, the truth did all the work for me. Even now, I sometimes think about how easily everything could have gone wrong. How close I came to losing the career I built. How one deleted file nearly changed my entire future. But it didn't. Because I refused to let anyone erase my voice. So if there's anything I want you to take from my story, it's this: protect your work. Trust your instincts. Stand by your truth, even when others don't. People will break your trust. People will underestimate you. People will try to take shortcuts at your expense. But your integrity, that quiet, steady part of you that stays honest even when others aren't, that's something no one can steal, no matter how hard they try. In the end, the truth didn't just save me. It reminded me who I am. And now, when I walk into any room, I walk in knowing one simple thing: no matter how dark someone tries to make your path, your truth will always shine through. If this story hit home for you, don't forget to like the video. And if you believe in standing up for your truth, even when others try to erase it, make sure you subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Stay strong. Stay true. And remember, your voice matters more than they want you to believe.